Brand safety is keeping your brand, keeping your adverts away from anything that could be detrimental to your brand. And that can be simple as bad content, or that can be fraudulent websites, fraudulent activity being inserted into your adverts, so they can actually be used as a puppet, if you like, to spread malicious code and viruses. Seriously not good. And also just the greedy practice of really fraudulent website owners, bad website owners, that will engage in practices such as ad stacking or loading pages with thousands of ad tags, which will result in your ads being shown off a page, even outside of the viewer's screen. And viewability is simply the art of making sure that adverts are seen, and that's around all content, whether it's good stuff as well. The key things to protect against in brand safety is three elements. The first one is making sure that your ads are pure and as you upload them, so they're not being hijacked and used for injecting malicious code onto people's computers, which is how viruses can spread. To be honest, it's unlikely that it's ever going to be tracked back to an advertiser, but it's just something that no decent person would ever want to do. So we make sure that that's avoided at all costs. The second element, again, is a little bit technical, and it's fraud, and it's by fraud committed by bad website owners. And there's a couple of practices or a couple of ways they go about this, and one's called ad stacking. So if you imagine a web page as a page in a newspaper or a magazine, and on this web page you've got several advertising placements, and you can only see, imagine now, like a deck of cards. If I was holding it up, you could only see the top card. With adverts, there's meant to be one per page, it's all meant to be flat, but people actually insert code into their pages to put thousands of adverts behind the one that's on top. So advertisers and their media agencies are unknowingly, a lot of the times, serving thousands of adverts into these slots, but the top one's only being shown. So you're paying for something which is absolutely useless. And the third element is a lot more commonplace, and it's something that we can all relate to. It's also a lot harder to control because it can be subjective, and that's keeping advertisers' adverts away from any content or any website that can be detrimental to their brand. And that becomes quite a hard thing to police, particularly when you look at things like good, decent, wonderful websites like newspaper websites, national news, that are arguably some of the premier placements on the web. However, the content of those websites can be bad. Great examples, all the classics. If you're an airline, you might want to stay away from articles about an ash cloud. If you're a train operating company, you probably want to stay away from performance statistics of Network Rail. If you're Jimmy Choo, you probably want to stay away from an article about stilettos and bad backs. And that's the three key areas that we have problems with as advertisers and as a media agency. So to make brand safety a reality in the programmatic world, and the programmatic world of display buying means that if we wanted to, we could almost literally buy any placement on the internet. And we know that the internet is a wonderful place, mainly because of a lot of the places that you don't want to show adverts on. So it's a technology play. So there's two technical methods of limiting liability. And the first one is, when you're buying programmatically, something called pre-bid. And this is when our technology is assessing advertising placements to buy. We do this for every single advertising placement that there is. We make an assessment of it, we work out whether it's right for a campaign, and we decide how much we want to pay for it in lots of cases. And while that process is going on, and this is all happening while a user's actually loading a page, we can refer to brand safety technology. There's several companies that specialise in this, to make sure that where we're about to buy this ad is safe and right. And they look at the context of the page, and they have algorithms to look at the fraud elements that we've talked about as well. There's a second way of doing this, which is a lot safer, but a little bit more, it's not quite so technology driven. But once we've bought an advertising placement, we'll scan the page for anything that's bad, and if we see any hint that there's content which is objectionable, or that any hint of any sort of any heuristics that have shown any fraud, we will physically block that advert from showing. It's not the Rolls Royce of solutions, because we've still paid for that advertising impression, but it's better to stop an ad appearing against something that's bad than to worry about your money. And that's the two key ways that it happens. Pre-bid sounds amazing, but the problem is everything happens so quickly. It doesn't necessarily, or at this point in time, we can't be 100% confident that it will catch everything. So it makes sense to do both, or certainly to do blocking. And that's fundamentally how we go about that. There's one final element that we at Jellyfish embrace, which is whitelisting. So despite the fact that we can buy pretty much any site on the internet, actually for each of our advertisers, we'll only go about buying sites that are on a specific whitelist, which makes sense to them. And it sounds like we're cutting off our nose to spite our face a little bit in a world where we can buy absolutely everything. But the websites that we use and we choose and we assess, it's an ongoing process, but they still represent about 97% reach into UK, US audiences. Well, viewability almost speaks for itself, I think. If an ad's being seen by an eyeball as opposed to a computer or just on a page that's never ever served, it's going to yield more results than ads that are. So having ads in view definitely equates to a more efficient campaign. The only possible downside of that is ad placements that are never in view or are close to really, really poor quality inventory will be really cheap. By their very definition, they're crap, so they're going to be priced that way. With the brand safety technology, although it sounds like it's more of a hygiene factor for a campaign to avoid fraud, to avoid being around bad content, actually when you start to get a handle on this and you realise there is quite a lot of fraud out there, quite a lot of people do unscrupulous things, that by honing campaigns, and this is where the whitelisting method comes into play to complement this, by weeding out repeat offenders, by making sure that we know precisely where our adverts are being displayed on behalf of our clients, means that we can sidestep fraudulent and bad ad placements, which actually means that more of the money is going to better placements, which result in better campaign performance, whether that's doing awareness messaging and reaching your right audiences, or even through to the DR world where you need a specific CPA target to come out of this. The upshot of all of this is knowledge is kind of power. You need to know where your adverts are running in this day and age. If you're a media agency, if your network, if you're using a network, cannot tell you exactly where your adverts are running, you quite frankly shouldn't be using them. It's not acceptable anymore. So this is where the efficiencies come. There's one caveat to all of this though, which is it's very, very difficult to understand exactly what percentage of a website or a web page's advertising traffic results maybe in a conversion a lot further down the line. If you've got a site which has a very poor viewability rate, you need to do your analysis properly, because although maybe 90% of your adverts are never seen, that website might account for quite a high percentage of actual results from the people that have seen the ads. So it's not a binary decision, and it has to be approached very carefully. And this is where the data-rich world that we live in really, really helps us as marketers. So we believe passionately in programmatic advertising for display and for other elements here, including attributing campaigns properly, which is something that we can look at in the future. But the underlying thing with all of these is campaign efficiency and finding the right audiences and really putting your adverts in front of the right people. Therefore, your marketing money goes further. And some of it's exciting, some of it's sexy, some of it makes perfect sense to any marketer, but some of it is a little bit humdrum, some of it is very techy and some of it's dull. Unfortunately, the fraud and viewability technology sometimes falls into that latter case for a lot of people, but it's the technology that the guys that we use that support this is incredibly sophisticated. The thing with fraud or bad placements is generally speaking from personal experience as a marketer, you never realise the seriousness of this. You never realise what the consequences can be until it's happened to you, and then you're as secure can be from that point onwards. So although a little bit dry, and although these often seem like an extra and possibly unnecessary cost to a marketing campaign, actually you can bring efficiencies out of it. So there is an upside, not only keeping your brand safe, but making your advertising spend go further, means that this is an essential piece of technology, an essential piece of strategy, and you need to start asking hard questions of your media vendors, of your providers, and maybe even of your agency around this subject.